Hello, and welcome to the lore of Braunhaven. Today we're going to be talking about the capital city of Drzewodolek. So Drzewodolek, capital city of the Half-Elves, it sits almost dead center in the Sylvanas forest, which can tend to make it very difficult for anybody to get to, due to the magical nature of the forest and how it will occasionally randomly shift its landscape. There are portals that will just instantly pop up and can cause parties to get split up because some of their people will get transported to the Fey realm. A lot of times, people that enter the Sylvanas Forest aren't ever going to make it to Drzewodolek simply because they're never seen again. They just are. There are so many problems that they just vanish. But this that doesn't stop elves. Any of the elven races, of course, and some other fey races, for example, leprechauns, can go through the Sylvanas forest and not run into those issues. And so there are some overland caravans that will make their way into the forest, and they almost always, I mean, I would say 99.9% of the time, and the 0.1% that's left over are considered crazy because they're probably never going to be seen again. All the 99.9% of those caravans have an elven guide, and so not only do they are they able to navigate the forest without the changing landscape, but they are also able to find routes through the forest, paths and small trails that are easier for the caravans, wagons, and carts, because obviously going over large tree roots isn't going to be an option for most of them. And so there are three main routes into the capital city of Drzewodolek, and those routes, you have Northbridge on the west side of the city. You have and Northbridge is really the North and South Bridge are the two common ways of entering the city, and of those two, North Bridge is the least common, but it is one route into the city. Then you have the community of South Bridge, and it is the most common route in. The travel once you get to this region, the travel is easier to go through Southbridge, and most parties will just accept the route into Southbridge to get into the city proper. And then the least used method would be to come in through a bridge that is to the southeast, and that bridge leads directly into the Tanatar ward. The Tanatar ward is kind of known as the lower class district of the city, um, but because they're elves, you would have to have a little bit more knowledge of to what you and I would think are lower class is not necessarily the same thing to the elves. And so, to the elves, for the most part, that's just going to be considered unacceptable. And so, Northbridge, uh, it is a small area. It is there are some small farms, not quite to the extent that there is in Southbridge. Mostly, Northbridge is known for its beautiful artwork, and almost everything is decorated with this delicately carved, uh, you know, nouveau style of art, and of course that transcends into the namesake for the town of Northbridge, and Northbridge is sometimes in Elven referred to as Ient o Lovers, and that means the Bridge of Lovers, and it is because of it's such a high arch that it has a beautiful view of the Indian River, especially at sunset. That young couples will sometimes come to this bridge, uh, or couples that are renewing their wedding vows or things of that nature. They'll come to this bridge because of the beauty of the area. Now, the like I said, there's small farms. Mostly, the like one of the biggest things that is made in Northbridge would be pine flour, which is made from pine nuts. They grind it up into a flour. But there are other small, very small farmsteads. You're talking about maybe 2 to 10 acres at a time. You're not talking about a large plot of land. But dominating that area would be a location called the Narbeth Arms, owned for hundreds of years by the Narbeth family, and currently under the ownership of Aramond Narbeth. It is an inn that it would be considered about middle class. So if you were to stay at the Narbeth Arms, you can expect to pay about 10% above what the list price is on the Braunhaven custom DM screen inserts or referee screen inserts. And it is considered a respectable inn. The food is decent. I wouldn't say that it's a 5-star restaurant, but it's good food. And so this inn was really established as a way for elves that don't have a permanent residence in the city but have to travel back and forth. This was designed to basically give them someplace to stay. And they kind of the Narbeth family ended up kind of falling on hard times, and this was some time ago. And so, because of the politics of Drzewodolek, you have this big division between the High Elves and the Wood Elves, and this division and the Wood Elves themselves came about through what is known as the Third Schism. And essentially, what that was is that the High Elves or elven society of the city were venerating the new gods more so than the old gods, or specifically Sinaz, the patron god of the elves. And a lot of the elven a small portion of the elven community felt that this was sacrilege, and that the elves were turning their back on their creator god. And so the schism happened when these elves decided that they weren't going to tolerate it. The Wood Elves are actually a lot more conservative than the High Elves. And so the Wood Elves decided they weren't going to tolerate that anymore, and left. And so ever since, there's been this schism between High Elves and Wood Elves. Well, the Narbeth family's oldest son at the time decided that he was going to leave, and he went and would later that group would become the Wood Elves. And when that happened, because of how elves treat each other, it created a big social rift for the family, and they lost a lot of credibility in elven society. And so this, of course, has led to Northbridge kind of being left out. They're not the Narbeth Arms isn't it hasn't been used as much since the Third Schism, and if it is used by caravans or traveling elves that they're in a hurry for someplace to stay. It is not their first choice, and so the area of Northbridge is less populated and not so well traveled as some of the other areas. In Southbridge, you have the opposite going on, and so Southbridge, out to about a 1 or 2 mile radius from Southbridge. Most that radius, of course, there's a river here, so that's not going to be that direction. So it would be to the southwest half circle. There are larger plots of land, farms, and not too long ago, a lot of those farms were going fallow, and the reason for that is that in the city's attempt to the Council of Elders that runs Drzewodolek are under a lot of pressure to mend this rift, even by the less conservative High Elves. They're under a lot of pressure to mend this rift. The people believe that elves should be one people, not many. And so there is a lot of pressure to mend this division between the High Elves and Wood Elves, and a step in that direction that the Council of Elders was attempting to do was to create land and areas for Wood Elves to inhabit as part of the city. And so the Guild of Housing and Development went and set up plots of land for the Wood Elves. That that's where it stopped. They set these farms up. They did give some of them out, and but that's where it stopped. They didn't follow through, and this is a problem with elven politics. The elves have very long lives, and because of that, they're not really in a hurry to do anything. The other problem is high elves are very arrogant, and they just they think that they can do something and then expect everybody else to read their minds and just follow through and that it's good. And that is rarely ever the case. And so what happened was you have these farms of Southbridge that some of them that were there because they didn't get the influx of wood elves that were expected. They were overproducing, and there wasn't enough population to eat the food, and that tanked the economy. And then you have other farms that are going fallow and not producing anything. They've just gone to weed, and so this was a major problem. And in stepped a elven noble of the Southbridge area, one Nyaris Ashrin. The Ashrin family has their ancestral home here of Ashrin Manor, and he basically came up with the solution. And of course, this wasn't all out of the goodness of his heart and generosity, although he is a very generous man. Um, he bought up, or he went to the Guild of Housing and Development and with a plan to put families of Southbridge in control of this land and actually make it produce the proper amount and kind of stabilize the economy. And so he bought up this land from the guild and then turned around and gave it back to the people of Southbridge. And the people he does charge a tax for each, and what we're talking about here is peasantry. So it is a rent or tax, however you want to look at it, but it is far less than what they would normally pay. And so, I mean, it's like maybe a quarter of what they would normally pay. And so essentially, the people of Southbridge love him. And this, of course, because of the boost to his social status, has made the Council of Elders take note of him, and he is now, Nyaris Ashran is now seriously under consideration to be a part of to be added to the Council of Elders. So his aspiration was really political. In the Southbridge area, you have a number, Southbridge proper, you have a number of small housesteads. There is a tavern located here. The tavern is the Vagabond Ferry. It is not an inn. So usually, anybody that is wanting to stay near the area of Southbridge, they will be directed across the bridge over into the south end of the docks district and to stay at the Rawlham Tavern and Inn. Highly recommended for foreigners to the city. That is where most of the shipping crews and caravan crews stay. It is very foreigner friendly, and so that will be where you will be directed, and it's pretty much just across the bridge. There is, of course, also Ashran Manor, and currently the area of Southbridge has a bit of a problem. So the Ashran family, they gained their wealth as a shipping magnate for import-export. And they they have a small fleet of ships that they use, and this has served the Ashran family well over the years. Um, they, in addition to their import-export business in Drzewodolek, they have business concerns across the Dragon Sea, way over there in the far-off nation of Arentus, and they have business holdings and land over there that is managed by a small management group that they leave over there. But this does mean that the head of household, Nyaris Ashran, has to sometimes make these trips over there just to, put the family face on the business. And one such trip was recently made. He was gone for quite some time because that is a long trip. And when he returned, this was about 6 months ago, when he returned, the people of Southbridge and his family in particular noticed that he was a little bit different. They mostly this manifested as a concern for his mental health. It seems like he was talking to people that weren't there, answering them, having one-sided conversations with people that didn't exist, things of that nature. And to double that, So while he was gone, his oldest daughter, Asanya Ashran, who is married to a gentleman named Kirill, she was running the family business. And um, when he returned, it was quite evident to the family, and of course, the people of Southbridge think that Nayaris Ashran is eccentric at this point, but they don't think that he is a major problem. While the family realized that he had enough of an issue that he was not able to actually run the business, and so Asania had kind of taken that on. And she was very smart. She has an excellent business acumen. She was doing quite well. Her husband, not quite so as good as she was, but he dotes on his wife, and Kirill Triskelion uh, pretty much did whatever she said. Unfortunately for everybody involved, about 6 months after his return, Asanya was found murdered, and quite a grisly murder, disembowelment, etc., hanging from a tree. The initial reaction to the in the area of Southbridge was that it is clearly some type of foul creature that they hadn't seen before had made its way through one of the portals in the Sylvanas forest, and that is what killed her. In the weeks that have followed, there have been other members of the Southbridge community that have gone missing, and some of those have been found murdered as well. Um, Nobody knows if this is, maybe it is a murderer, but the general consensus is that there is something stalking the people of Southbridge. And they would be, of course, very welcome to anybody that would offer some aid in looking into this matter. They are at this point. It's become enough of a concern that the Master of the Hunt, the Elder Council, has sent the Master of the Hunt over to Southbridge to put the matter to rest. And but even he's not even sure what's going on. So they would welcome any assistance from anybody that was coming through that would offer aid. So that's Northbridge and Southbridge, and if you come back next week, we will be talking about the Docks Ward. Thank you for watching.